Թորոնթոյի հայտարարի հրավերով շաբաթ հոկտեմբեր 14-ին Գանատայի նորանշանակ Հայաստանի դեսպան Andrew Turner Հայ Կեդրոն այցելեց։ Ցեզի կներկայացնենք մասեր իր այցելութենեն։ Նորանշանակ դեսպան Andrew Turner-ի հյուրասիրության ընթացքին արձարծվեցան զանազան հարցեր։ Խոսվեցավ, թե հարկ է պատժամիջոցներ կիրառել Ադրբեջանի թեմ, որպեսզի անոնց ետ բերել բանակցության սեղանի շուրջ։
I think with regards to the question of sanctions, again, Minister Jolie and the rest of the government have said that all options remain very much on the table. We are discussing it with our partners. I can speak from direct experience in my previous job as the director for Eastern Europe and Eurasia. I spent a considerable amount of my time coming up with new sanctions to impose on Russia, so I am very familiar with the process. There will be lots of expertise and experience that I can draw on. The big challenge is that because Canada's relations are so much closer with Armenia than they are with Azerbaijan, most countries are drawing energy. Canada is a major energy producer. We're not really doing a lot of commercial business with Azerbaijan. We don't have as much direct leverage through our sanctions. So one of the things we try to do with all of our sanctions is engage with like-minded. And of course, many of them are using Azerbaijan's energy to move away from Russia, so it becomes more challenging. The reality for a country like Canada is that whilst we have a degree of influence, we're not the superpower. We're not the United States. We don't have the economic links to Azerbaijan that the EU does. So our strongest ability to impact the situation comes from diplomatic engagement, and whether that is with engagement preemptively to try to prevent Baku from taking further action, or to have engagement with our partners on the question of sanctions, that is often a more productive route than simply launching something on our own. We are very committed to doing what we can to support Armenia in all of these avenues, so through diplomacy, through the direct engagement on the ground, and I am quite certain as well through further humanitarian assistance.
Հարց տրվեցավ, թե ինչ է ձեր դեսլագանը տեսփանադան գործունեության կամ առաքելության նկատմամբ եւ ինչ է առաջնահերթությունը բացի տնտեսական գաբերու զարգացումեն։
Well, I think I would say that it's for right away I would describe it as threefold. So first and most immediately is the response to the humanitarian situation. I think that has to take top priority over everything. That hopefully will be a transitional phase though, but it is still very important and will be one of the things that I will focus on as soon as I arrive. The second, how Canada and Armenia can strengthen our ties. So again, support to the parliament, support to increasing the support to civil society. Again, looking at the possibility of sharing expertise on environmental issues for Lake Savan, for example. Mm-hmm. And the third, although in many ways perhaps the most important, and for all the talk of assessing the geopolitics of the South Caucasus and the possibilities of democratic reform, the reality is that there's also a significant component of my mandate that's going to be very pragmatic of the nuts and bolts of the embassy. So managing the construction project, hiring our staff, expanding our footprint so that we're able to operate. That is a very important function because what we want to do is to get the embassy to be fully operational. So we have it there, it is open, it is working, which is very good, but for example, we're not yet at the stage where we can deliver the consular services straight from the embassy.
Have immediate access to what's going on in Armenia.
Այլ հարց, մեզ մեջ շատերը չնայած որ կանադացիներ ենք եւ հոս կաբրինք, Հայաստանի կամ Արցախի մեջ հարազատներ ունենք եւ բادرազմի իրավիճակը արդեն իսկ 2020 թվականին սկսյալ մեզի համար միայն լուրեր եղած չեն։ Իսկ այս օրերուս երբ դարձյալ նոր բادرազմներու վտանգը արգա է դարաձաշրջանի մեջ, ինչպիսի թեր պիտի ունենա Կանադան։
No, I think right now everyone is very conscious of the realities of the possibility of further conflict. The government is engaged very actively in discussions, as I said, with all of the countries in the region to make it clear that any violation of Armenian sovereignty would be unacceptable. The reality is Canada is never going to have the military power that the US has, and our military contributions would not have the same impact. So I think that the fact that the United States was doing the military exercises and exploring these avenues of what, again, keeping in mind tradition, Armenia is a military ally of Russia, so this is a very big step from the US perspective. We're also seeing more and more discussions within NATO about opportunities for cooperation, and likewise as well from Canada. Again, I've been going through and having discussions with my counterparts in national defense, and there is a broad consensus that looking at what we are seeing, not just in terms of the threat, but also the efforts by Armenia to broaden its relationships, to move away from being solely dependent on Russia for security. The goal would be to get to a point where we could find a peace agreement that would resolve all of these outstanding issues, that would have all of the prisoners of war freed. There is a lot of reason to be skeptical. But this inherently is one of the things that leads people into diplomacy, is trying to find opportunities.
If it not or have been for our education system.
Գարձիկ հայտնվեցավ գարելիության սահմաններում մեջ հadoop ծրագրով Արցախցի ուսանողներ հրավիրել, որբեսի ուսումը Կանադայի մեջ ստանան, թե աբակայի ղեկավարներ կպատրաստվին եւ թե Հայաստանի հետ կապերը կսերտանան։
No, I couldn't agree with you more. My parents are both immigrants. My father's an Englishman, my mother's a Scot. So I'm the first person in my family born in Canada. And because Canada, when they came here in the 70s, they recognized that Canada was a bilingual country. They insisted that it was so important for their children to learn French. And so my education, I was enrolled from the very start of my education in a completely francophone school. So I didn't have any education in English at all until about grade 4 or 5. I have obviously benefited tremendously from that because that foundation of learning French at such a young age, I was then able to continue throughout the rest of my education, and that ultimately has led me to be able to work in government and now to take on this position. So I have admitted to my parents that this was the one time that they were right. I was wrong. But it certainly has highlighted to me through my own personal experience how important education is. And no, this is very much something that we are looking to expand. Again, specifically the point about exchanges with youth is something that Special Envoy Dio himself had flagged as something urgent, and more broadly as well, many colleagues in the department, the JP included, has done a lot of work on education and the opportunities that does have to enhance not just people-to-people ties, but then that knowledge and, yes, familiarity with Canada, and then provide further interest down the road as a place to visit or invest. And so it is absolutely foundational and very much something that we intend to look at.
Based on the past 5 years, based on
Այլ հարց, մեզ համար մեծ հիասթափություն էր տեսնել Կանադայի լռությունը 120,000 արցախցիներու դեղահանման ընթացքին։ Արդյոք ինչ միջոցներով կարող եք օգտագործել, որբեսի 120,000 դեղահանված արցախցիները կարենանաբահով գերբով ետ վերադառնալ իրենց բնակավայրերը, իրենց բաբենական հողերուն վրա։
return back to their ancestral lands?
No, well, thank you. First of all, of course, I would make sure to highlight that the government has put out statements condemning the actions, condemning the violations that have taken place, and the displacement of the community. As you say, yes, it is the Government of Canada's position, as it is for the United Nations, that Nagorno-Karabakh is recognized as part of Azerbaijan. However, we have always maintained that this was an issue that should be discussed and negotiated between the two countries on the principles of self-determination, territorial integrity, and the non-use of force. And if nothing else, it's very clear that the non-use of force has not been respected. Again, I'm not the one who decides Canadian policy, so that broader question of the status and international recognition, that is something that you would need to raise with the government on that question. However, on the question about the rights of the people to return, no, there is no doubt about that. That is the absolute minimum that must be done, and the government is very clear and has been very clear in all of our discussions with, as I say, not just ourselves and our like-minded, but directly with Baku as well as with Ankara. It is entirely possible, and of course it's an individual's personal choice that if they don't feel safe and they do not wish to return and prefer to remain in Armenia, that they are at liberty to do so. But that does not negate the fact that they have the right to return to their lands, their homes, their property. Those have to be respected, and any choice that is made has to be a free choice, made without fear of compulsion or a belief that if they go back, they will be harassed and forced to flee again, or even worse. So that question of the right of the people who have been displaced to return to their homes is absolute. Canada fully supports it. We have already spoken out in favor of it, and we will continue to do so.
But the environment has to be there. I mean, we can't just say they have the right to go back, but the environment isn't there. I mean, the reason why 100,000 people left is because they don't feel safe,
No, indeed, and that is a perfectly normal response after 10 months of a blockade, after the violence that occurred, and all of this against the backdrop of the 2020 conflict and everything has happened. That is it's not just a natural; it's almost a human nature. It would almost be.
Ambassador, I've seen videos of a young man being killed and beheaded, and the images have been sent to the parents. And if you expect that person to stay in that country, it's impossible. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, it's a horrible sight. I mean, this is how they're treating the people who've been there all this time, and there's no way those people would have stayed. I mean, I can't imagine, anybody in the right mind to think that I can stay there.
No, indeed.
Unless you want to die.
No, indeed.
The environment has to be there, and that's what Canada should be doing. It should be asking for that environment to change.
Ի վերջո նաև խոսվեցավ Հայաստանի եւ Կանադայի մեջ առանց վիզայի ճամփորդության հնարավորության մասին.
Canada remains one of the most welcoming and open societies to refugees and immigrants in the entire world. But one of the reasons we're able to do this is because that we do everything we can to control and limit illegal migration, and we have the benefits of geography that make it much easier for us to do so compared to many of our partners in Europe or even the United States. the process for going through and discussing refugee claims is a very lengthy, very complex, very bureaucratic one. So even people who are demonstrably false refugee claimants and taking advantage of the system can consume a massive amount of time and resources. So as a result, our colleagues in IRCC are somewhat constrained by the realities of both the legislation as well as this political reality, and therefore their decisions are on the removal of visas requirements from countries are very much based on technical criteria. What are the numbers of fraudulent cases? What are the numbers of fake claimants that we see? The total volume, all of these things. So while I'm certainly very happy and will absolutely advocate for the removal of visa restrictions on Canada, it is not uncommon for them to insist on us doing the same, and that may be more challenging just because it is purely a question of a technical scenario. I don't think that Armenia is a country in which we have vast numbers of fraudulent visa claims, but it is purely this statistical technical analysis that they do of we need to have X percentage over X years before we can look at it. Obviously, the role of the embassy is to be there to support and help all Canadians, but I think it's very clear that there is a special tie between the Armenian Canadian community and the work over decades to establish this mission, and also surely from numbers, the large numbers of communities who will be going there, and so the role of the embassy in providing service. So it is something that I very much welcome the opportunity to engage with you here today. And lastly, and of course most importantly, is the embassy is there. It is your embassy as Canadians, so anytime you are passing through, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and my colleagues.
And Your Excellency, this community center is open for you to come anytime you want. We are here. We are proud Canadians and proud Armenians at the same time, and we want you to come back again, as we said.
Thank you for
Thank you for having me.